Okay, this lesson's not in your book. We're going to come back to your book and kind of tie a couple lessons here together that relate to what's in your book in Module 13. We're going to look at solving absolute value equations just using algebra. So first, let's talk about absolute value. What is absolute value? Well, first, let's look at how we represent absolute value. Absolute value are these bars right here. So what does absolute value do? Absolute value makes any number positive. So if I do absolute value of -2, I get 2. But also if I do absolute value of 2, I still get 2. So what that means is there are two values for which I can take the absolute value and get the same thing. Now, that's important because as we start to graph these, we're going to understand how absolute value works graphically. So another thing we need to note is where do we find absolute value on our calculator? So on our calculator, if you press the second and then the 0 button, right above that in blue on your calculator is the word catalog. And catalog allows you to look up any mathematical relationship, terminology on your calculator, doing it alphabetically. Well, the first one that pops up there is ABS, which stands for absolute value. If you have an old calculator, when you pick this, if you press enter, it's going to bring ABS parenthesis, and then you type in whatever you want to in the parenthesis. If you have a newer calculator and you choose ABS, it's just going to pull up the absolute value bar and then ask you to type in whatever you need inside the absolute value bar. So that's where you find it on the calculator. Now, let's actually look at how do you solve absolute value. Now, be mindful again, remember, there are always two values that you can take the absolute value of and get the same numeric value, okay? And that's going to be important as we go through and solve. Okay, so let's look at a problem. Let's go really basic here. So let's say we have absolute value of x equals 3. Well, we just got through saying what are two numbers that I can plug in to get. Now, in doing this, what we do is we have two cases. We have x equals 3 or x equals -3 because there are two numbers, again, that work to give us 3 when we put them in absolute value. Now, that's not really solving, that's just a relationship or given value. Now, how do we do this if we actually have to solve? So let's take another example. So let's say x minus 2 equals 3. Now, again, we have something in here in the absolute value that has to equal the value of 3. Now, what we know is those two values from the previous problem are 3 and -3, but because I have this x minus 2, it doesn't work out that way, but we're going to set it up similarly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take what we have inside the absolute value here, x minus 2, and set that equal to 3, or, again, take what's inside, x minus 2, and set that equal to -3. So you've always got two cases. You've always got where it's equal to +3 or -3, just like we did up here, okay, and just like we did on the previous slide. Now it's just a matter of solving each. So I add 2, add 2. So here x equals 5, or do the other case, add 2, add 2. So here we get x equals -1. Now, let's go back and see if this makes sense. So if I take 5 and plug that in here, what's 5 minus 2? 5 minus 2 is 3. What's the absolute value of 3? 3, so that works. If I take -1, what's -1 minus 2? -1 minus 2 is -3. But remember, that's an absolute value. So what's the absolute value of -3? 3. So there's always two cases, okay? It's a positive case or it's going to be a negative case. Now, we're going to take this a step further. So one of the things I gleaned from another teacher was that when you solve absolute value inequalities, you need to, or equations, sorry, you need to treat the absolute value kind of like being in a prison cell. And there are people who come to visit you outside your prison cell, and then you want to be paroled. So all of that it will make sense as I go through an example here. So let's make up a problem again. Let's keep with the x minus 2, but let's add another step. Let's add 2x minus 2. And then let's put something else on the outside. Let's say minus 3 equals 3. Okay, so what you have is you're in prison right here. The absolute value bars are your prison cell. You have a visitor here to come see you outside your prison cell, but you want to be paroled. You cannot be paroled until all your visitors are gone. That means you're going to have to move this over. So what happens? You get 2x minus 2. How do you get rid of the minus 3 there? You want to add 3 to both sides. So if you do that, and 3, now we have 6. Now all my visitors are gone. I don't have any visitors outside my prison cell. So now I can get paroled. So what's that look like? So that means, like we did previously, you're going to take 2x minus 2 equals positive 6, okay? So here, when you get paroled, you get out of prison, what are you going to do? You have two choices. You can either choose to do what's right, that's the positive case, or you can choose to do what's wrong. 2x minus 2 equals negative 6. Okay? So you can either choose to do what's right. So here's the halo, right? Or you can choose to do what's wrong. And there's the devil's pitchfork, right? So do what's right or do what's wrong. Those are your two cases. Now you just work out each individually. Add 2, add 2. So 2x equals 8. Then divide by 2, and x equals 4. Or come back over here, do your other case. Plus 2, so 2x equals negative 4. Then divide by 2, and x equals negative 2. So those are our two solutions. And then what we would do on a number line is we would go to negative 2 and put a dot, and then go to 4 and then put another dot, and those are our two possible solutions. Now remember, absolute value can have two solutions because there are two numbers that you can take the absolute value of to get a positive value. Now, one thing to note, when you're solving, don't just work one case out and then say the other one's the negative. You've seen here that those are not the same value. Let's do one more example. So all we're going to do here is we're just going to continue to build. So we had absolute value 2x minus 2, and then I had minus 3 equals 3. But what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to put something else on the outside. I'm going to put a 2 here, so 2 times. So just like before, all we want to do, we got to get rid of all of our visitors outside our prison cell. So you can think of this, I'm going to write over here on the side, think of this kind of like as an equation. Just treat this whole absolute value as like a single variable. So if it looked like this, 2y minus 3 equals 3, think about what you would do first. So this y here is like our absolute value. What would be the first thing I would do? I would need to add 3 to both sides. So that's what I'm going to do here, add 3. So just like I did earlier. Now I have 2 times absolute value, 2x minus 2 equals 6. Well, if we come over here and do this, 2y equals 6, now what would I do? Now I would divide by 2. Okay, and get y is 3. Now, again, this y is like our absolute value, so I'm going to come over here and do the exact same thing. I'm going to divide by 2 because really this is multiplication. So again, you got to get rid of everybody outside your prison cell. So now I have 2x minus 2 equals 3. Now I do my 2 cases. 2x minus 2 equals, again, positive 3, or 2x minus 2 equals negative 3. Always have your 2 cases. And then you work them out. So add 2, add 2. So 2x equals 5, divide by 2, and you're going to get a fraction here. Now, how you type this in on the homework, you may want to click an example, but you could do 5/2, or that's also 2.5, or you could do 2.5. Those are all the same thing, but again, look how it wants it on the homework. Okay, let's do the other side. So add 2, so those cancel. So now I got 2x equals negative 1, divide by 2, and x is a negative 1/2. So this is how you solve absolute value equations algebraically. And now we'll do some homework using this.